Good morning and greetings from the entire TERI family. Welcome all of you to this year's World Sustainable Development Summit. This year, the summit series completed 2 decades of institutionalization. And this, mind you, is the only track 2 event of this scale hosted in a developing country. Inaugurating the summit yesterday, Honorable Prime Minister emphasized that we need to walk the talk. And what best can happen where we have today a set of business leaders and visionaries who are actually walking the talk in the space of sustainability, net zero, and growth. We welcome all of you to this CEO Roundtable themed Holistic Sustainability as an Industry Growth Agenda to Shape India's Climate Ambition. This track at WSDS is hosted along with our partners, SAP. The track today will discuss the role of industry transition in achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement with a focus on initiatives that CEOs from various organizations across the industries are planning and are already implementing. And of course, the alignment and linkages to the UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development, which offer a compelling growth strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to have founding CEO signatories of the Industry Charter for Near Zero Emission Ambition by 2050, Mr. Nitin Prasad, Mr. Mahendra Singh, Mr. Rajeev Mishra. We are delighted to also share with all of you that Mr. Mahendra Singh is now part of our governing council. Mr. Singh, your continued support and leadership keeps us motivated and relevant through times. The Industry Charter is a cross-sectoral initiative and which connects both the demand and the supply side across the industry sectors to look at the linkages on how growth and sustainability can go hand in hand. For us to begin the deliberations today, we have Mr. Girish Sethi, Senior Director, Energy, TERI. To set the context, may I have Mr. Girish Sethi to talk to us about the announcements that India has made at COP26 Glasgow and the Panchamrit that Honorable Prime Minister has given the vision for all of us, and how shaping the 2030 agenda and the decade of action is relevant in today's time. Mr. Girish Sethi, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Arup, for this very nice introduction. So good morning, everybody. I think good morning to all the CEOs. I think I also join Arup in welcoming all of you. I think it's really an honor for TERI to have you as a part of this panel. I would also like to welcome all the participants, I think, who have joined in to this track. I think I appreciate the point all of you have joined this session. There are at least 6 or 7 parallel tracks which are going on at the same time, including another one around the same similar theme. So all of you really welcome to this session. So as Arup mentioned, I think he talked about the Panchamrit. I think we all know about the announcements made by the Honorable Prime Minister at the Glasgow COP a couple of months back. And I think the reference was to increase our ambitions around renewable energy, increase our ambitions around non-fossil energy, on the energy intensity issues. And I think the big one, of course, was the announcement that, yes, we would also be net zero by, as a country by 2070, although it's around 50 years ahead. But I think that, to me, is really a very big announcement for a large country like India, which is still developing, and we are yet to build our infrastructure. We are yet to build our roads, ports, rural infrastructure, everything. So I think in that regard, I think this big announcement that by 2070 India would be net zero is really a big one, I would think, for a large country like India, to me. Probably the only large economy around the world which can make this kind of a statement when we are yet to develop. So in that regard, I just wanted to set the context for the session today. If one has to actually achieve this net zero by 2070 in this 50-year time frame, I think the role of the industry and the business is extremely important. And why I say so, if even we look at today, almost 50% of the total energy consumption, or more than 50%, is actually by the industry sector. And here I would say that if the action has to happen, it has to not just happen with the large, big industry, with the large emitters like the steel industry or the cement industry or the other fertilizer, aluminium, but also extremely important is a big segment, which of course is not represented today, also are the small and the medium enterprises, which directly or indirectly are linked with, I think, all of you in your value chains. We have done some at TERI some very broad estimates. Almost 30 to 40% of the actual energy consumption in the industry sector actually comes from these small and medium enterprises. So I think here comes, I think I would say, the role of the large emitters as well as I think the solution providers. I think we are really glad that I think SAP has joined hands with TERI, and I think you yourself have a net zero commitment. I think as a company, as an India, within India or globally, as I guess. I think Ms. Gangadharan will be talking about that, I'm sure. So I think it's extremely important to look at not just the emitters, but also I think the solution providers, whether they are from the soft side or I think players like our colleagues like Mr. Rajeev and Mishra, who are the providers for renewable energy. So I think this brings me to just I'll take another 2 or 3 minutes to mention that we at TERI have been working very closely over the last 2 or 3 years on this whole subject of industry transition. What should be the pathways for industry transition for a country like India or globally for that matter? And we have worked with global players like the Energy Transition Commission and also quite a few other players on this. We ourselves have come out with a few reports specifically for the steel sector. We came out with a consultation document and we came out with the report on the potential for hydrogen in India. I think, and we are all waiting for the minute details of the hydrogen mission, which was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister during Independence Day speech last year. So I think we at TERI believe that there are 5 major pillars to industry decarbonization. The first one, of course, is the big one, which is again in the short to medium term would be the energy efficiency. We do have in India, I would say, global leaders on energy efficiency. I think Mr. Mahendra Singh, the Dalmia Cement plants, is probably the globally best in terms of the specific energy consumption values. But I would also mention that I think all plants are not like Dalmia Cement plants. All plants at least in the medium sector or in other sectors are not as efficient as the one which Mr. Singh heads. So there is definitely a possibility for improving energy efficiency in the industry sector as a whole in the short to medium term. The second pillar, which we always talk about, is the whole subject of fuel switching and use of renewable energy wherever possible, whether it is from electricity or even on the thermal side for low temperature applications, or use of biomass wherever it is possible. And I think I would also like to mention, because we are actually a panel having the industry players here, I would just like to mention, I think our assessment is that almost 70 to 80% of the total energy in industries is in the thermal form, is as heat. So I think it's very important to see that wherever options exist to electrify as our grids become more and more greener, we should be moving from direct fossil fuel heat from coal to electrification wherever possible. And this is possible in many applications, specifically in places like the foundries, forgings. I think we have so many of them across the country. But all this is not going to lead us to a net zero, whether it's RE or electrification. So I think what's important comes the third pillar, which we call it as the deep carbonization. So I think here we need to get these innovative solutions going. We need to focus on R&D and getting globally, I think, working on these innovative solutions. And whether it is for a sector like cement, the carbon capture, utilization of storage, direct CO2 capture, I think people have been talking about. And here also comes the big one, which we are talking now, I think for the last 2 years, I think also is the role of hydrogen. I think in many of the sectors, the green hydrogen coming from electrolysis of water. We have been using in India almost 6 million tons of hydrogen in sectors like fertilizers and refineries. But I think but that is coming from the fossil fuel route. So if we are able to move in the green hydrogen route, Government of India is thinking of, I guess, I think we have heard in many of the forums that yes, there are possibilities of a PLI kind of a scheme for electrolyzers as well. So I think that's the fourth big area for the industries as a whole. Our analysis says that by 2050, almost 50% of almost 80% of the total hydrogen demand in the country would actually be from industries, not from the transport, which was earlier thought of. And then finally, I think I would just like to end by saying that the fifth big pillar, I think, is the most important of all these, not directly from the technology side, but I think on the whole issue of demand optimization, material circularity, and I think end use efficiencies, like things like fertilizers. I think we were in a panel yesterday where I think the Deputy Director General of FPI mentioned that how we use our fertilizers in the fields, I think that can actually help in reducing significantly the emissions. So this whole big chunk of demand optimization in terms of the materials, whether we are talking about ride sharing, whether we are talking about co-working spaces, how the world is going to face. So in all that, I think that's a big fifth one in terms of demand optimization and material circularity. So I'll just end by just putting this framework around, and we are really happy to have SAP and quite a few other industry charter leaders who have agreed to join with us for this in this journey. And with this, I just close my remarks, and back to you, Arup.
Thank you. Thank you, Girish. With an aim to propel India's sustainability agenda, our partnership with SAP stands. Our partnership with SAP strives to achieve sustainability in all aspects of operations, service delivery, and governance across key industries, societies, and government. This collaboration will leverage, on one hand, TERI's domain expertise in sustainability, specifically in the energy and the resources sector, while on the other hand, SAP's technologies to enable business processes, collaborations with value chain, tracking and reporting capabilities to achieve sustainability. From the entire TERI family, thank you, Ms. Sindhu Gangadharan, for your leadership and support. The central theme and ethos of our partnership with SAP is on technology for sustainability. And ladies and gentlemen, herein today, we have amongst us Mr. Paul Marriott, the President of SAP Asia Pacific, Japan. And if I may request Mr. Marriott to talk about the role of technologies to accelerate actions to achieve holistic sustainability and mainstreaming climate risks. Mr. Paul Marriott, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Marriott. I am the President of Asia Pacific and Japan at SAP, and it is my great honor to speak to you all today. And I'm particularly pleased to be following the insightful speakers from TERI, who are doing critical work to boost sustainability in energy and resources. Now, it's been a couple of months since we wrapped up COP26 in Glasgow, and the world was looking for strong promises to limit climate change. And I know there are concerns that we didn't go far enough, but we still saw some progress. We certainly heard at COP26, Prime Minister Modi's Panchamrit announcement, a significant move forward for India. Those 5 elixirs drive towards a zero emissions by 2070, underpinned by a range of targets through to 2030, including boosting non-fossil fuel energy, reducing carbon intensity, and cutting 1 billion tons of carbon emissions in less than 10 years. So it's really encouraging to see that as a key part of a global agreement to keep our hopes of the 1.5 degrees alive. Yet, despite the optimism, the daily impact of climate change on our world is truly catastrophic. Climate disasters cost the world more than $100 billion last year. This is even before you consider the human cost. Now, sadly, Asia has the largest impact on global climate change. Our region generates 45% of the world's CO2 emissions, or 17 billion tons, which is twice North America and Europe combined. It's simple. We cannot create a sustainable world together without solving sustainability here in Asia. And words and agreements are no longer enough. It's time for us to act now. But how do we achieve this? I fundamentally believe that digital transformation will be the deciding factor in our 1.5 degree quest. At SAP, we believe sustainability is a resource management challenge. We talk about this for the last 50 years, leading enterprise resource planning. We generate 80% of commerce alone globally. SAP is at the forefront to drive sustainability in APJ, and it's my goal to work alongside our customers to reduce 1 billion tons of carbon emissions in the region by 2025. And India is a critical market for us, with more than half of our 2021 sustainability customers coming from your country. So if sustainability is a resource management problem, then one solution is to change how we use data. We think there are 4 key areas where technology can accelerate sustainable outcomes. How do we steer organizations to report on progress? How do we get to zero emissions? How do we get to zero waste? And how do we get to zero inequality? First, let's look at the measurements. Now, we all know you cannot manage what you cannot measure, and you can't be held accountable if you don't report on those important numbers. Now, here in India, you seem to agree. India was the first country to mandate corporate social responsibility back in 2013, and then new requirements for the top 1,000 companies to report ESG outcomes has a significant indicator that performance isn't just about financial results. However, there is a long way to go. Globally, almost 7 out of 10 CEOs say they find it hard to measure ESG data across their value chain. But as companies increasingly move to the cloud, the data is there for us to use. Automated data and analytics creates insights and helping us benchmark results and report in real time. Secondly, we need to transform our business to move towards zero emissions. Now that sounds like an impossible goal, but it's one we have to achieve. It's not enough to focus on direct greenhouse gas outputs of energy consumption, what we call scope 1 and 2 emissions. We must also measure and reduce scope 3 emissions, those indirect emissions accrued through the value chain. Now, the good news is we can use upstream data about the goods and services that you buy, their distribution, or even your employees' travel, as well as the downstream data and how your products are processed, transported, and used. All of this to allow us to make better decisions. Thirdly, we must change how we consume products to get to zero waste. Now, renewable energy on its own is 55% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. The rest will come from transforming the way goods are made and used. New technologies are helping us move away from the take, make, waste model to the way of making the business processes and the economy circular. In his Independence Day speech, Prime Minister Modi called on India to get behind mission circular economy. And there are lots of emerging ways to do that. Chief among them is ensuring visibility across the product lifecycle. 80% of your product sustainability impact is baked into when it is designed. So mitigating that waste, as well as complying with the various extended producer responsibility laws around the world, is critical innovation. And finally, we can't forget the social aspect to all of this. We have to push for zero inequality. Everyone has a role to play in the future of our business and our society. And it means embracing diversity and committing to equality for everyone. That can be as simple as procurement software that ensures your suppliers meet ethical standards. For example, the T in SAP offices is sourced from local social enterprises. And it means investing in good work. One SAP team in India identified some villages who only had 11 eye doctors across millions of people. So by using cloud software, they created a scalable way to reduce preventable blindness and screened over 2,800 people in just 2 weeks. That's real impact driven by technology. To wrap up, it's clear that there's a lot of work to do, especially when you consider India is the fourth largest emitter of carbon dioxide. The future of our businesses, our countries, and our planet is still in our hands if we act responsibly, smartly, and quickly. Sustainability and technology can no longer progress in parallel. Technology has to play a key role in making sustainable and profitable businesses. Digital transformation must form a core part of every sustainability strategy, and sustainability must be integrated into every digital strategy. Together, we can work as one to do more good, not less bad, and live in sync with our planet. We have the technology and the will to make the change. I'm committed to these ambitious goals, and in partnership with all of you, I can't wait to make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Marriott. Thank you for your thoughts and setting the context for us. Like I said in the beginning, at the inaugural session, the Honorable Prime Minister emphasized the importance of walking the talk, and we are delighted and proud to present to you a panel who is walking the talk. And an important point that Mr. Marriott you have also mentioned, I will also put that to the CEO panel about choices. Now, will our tomorrow mirror our yesterday? Will yesterday's technologies limit the ways in which we produce and use energy? The answers point out to the importance of being ready for this transition and the kinds of issues that this transition will throw up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to introduce to you Ambassador Singh Puri, who would be the chairperson for the panel discussion. On the screen, you would see the CEOs and the business leaders and visionaries who have joined us today. Ambassador Mankiev Puri has been the lead negotiator for India at the United Nations on issues related to the post-2015 development agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, and at the UN Conference on Sustainable Development held at Brazil in 2012. He has been a key member of India's delegation at various climate change negotiations, including the Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC in Copenhagen, in Montreal, in Bali, in Bonn, in Poznan, and recently at Glasgow. Alongside Ambassador Mahendra Singh Puri, we have Mr. Mahendra Singh from Dalmia Cement Bharat Limited. We have Mr. Nitin Prasad from Shell Companies in India. We have Ms. Sindhu Gangadharan from SAP India Labs. We have Mr. Rajeev Ranjan Mishra from Aparva Energy Private Limited. And we have Mr. S. Sunil Kumar from Henkel Adhesive Technologies India Private Limited. Welcome all of you, and over to you, Ambassador Singh Puri.
Arup, thank you very much. And Girish Sethi, thank you very much to you too. Dear friends, let me also, on behalf of TERI, welcome you to this roundtable. And let me tell you that not just because I am chairing this roundtable that I feel that this is very important, but I am convinced along with my colleagues, and I think Girish Sethi underlined this very well, that if industry won't move, things really won't move, and we really must move. Mr. Marriott, thank you very much for your address. It was thoughtful, it was substantive. You listed ways and means in which things could be done and which have already been done, i.e. you demonstrated how things could be done. And let me leave a very big thought to everyone. Digital, of course, is the mantra that India has adopted now for the last several years. In fact, the kind of digitalization that you see in this country, including among normal people, each and every one of them, perhaps even propelled by the COVID pandemic, is something which is extraordinary, which many years back people would have said was near impossible. But for me, the very important thing is something that you did mention, but perhaps not so explicitly, which is that digital, in fact, helps and leads to sustainability. And I think that's where you are going to become some of the key players. And the kind of work that SAP does and organizations like it does, the leadership that you display is going to be particularly critical for an India, the size of which is known to all of you. We will be the largest country in the world in the next 6-7 years and will be the third or the fourth largest economy in the world again in the next 10, 15, 20 years. This is therefore absolutely critical, and let me assure you that we look forward to a strong relationship with SAP. You on your digital side, we on our sustainability, and actually for India building this particular bridge. So thank you very much, SAP, for all that you've done and for being here with us in a very strong manner. The word that I have been hearing for the last, since yesterday, actually the word is circularity. And I fully understand why circularity is the word which is stressed in a very big manner, because the basic theme of WSDS is sustainable consumption and production. But I want to leave another word with all of you, and that word is lifestyle. Because circularity and everything else that you want, much of it is related to production. If we don't do something in terms of consumption, and particularly at the most profligate parts of the world, regions of the world, then we are going to find that much of what we are doing gets finally reduced to nothing really much. And so therefore, lifestyle movements are certainly going to be important. Again, I quote Prime Minister Modi from his speech in Glasgow, where he spoke about life, which is lifestyle in environment. With these words, I want to welcome the panel. We have about 45 minutes, but we have a star-studded panel and people with great achievements in their own corporate world. Now, I will leave a question to almost all of them, which comes from my heart, my way of thinking. So the first person who's going to speak, and I'm following the list in front of me, is Mr. Mahendra Singh. Mr. Singh has already been introduced to you in various ways. I won't say much, but I just want to make one point to you. He took on the challenge of what used to be called the hard-to-abate sectors, and he made it possible, can be abated, will be abated, and a role model for everyone else to say, nothing is impossible, certainly it is abatable, and that's the story of the cement sector, considered to be one of the toughest nuts to crack, if I may be allowed to use this kind of a simile. Mr. Singh, over to you and what you've achieved and the thoughts that you leave for our colleagues in leadership in business. The screen is yours, Mr. Singh.
Thanks, Ambassador Puriji, and thanks to TERI, and thanks to Arup and Girish for introducing Dalmia Cement in all positive ways. And I'm fully concerned about the way we have to talk the walk. And I'm very happy that I'm associated and joined by Mr. Nitin Prasad, Rajeev, Ranjan, Gangadharan, and all. So I think the most important for us is to think of larger purpose for any industry, because the title today of discussion is also the holistic approach for sustainability. So in holistic approach, once we are able to create a larger purpose, which is for people, which is for planet, which is for prosperity, then I think definitely we all can address the sustainability, we can all address the sustainability development goal. And this is, friends, fortunately, we could do many years back, and that has helped us to take on and to take up the issues which is not only for Dalmia Cement, which is not the only for cement sector, but for the whole globe. And that was that how, as a business organization, we can have business philosophy which can merge both profitability and sustainability. And that's why we've adopted business philosophy of clean and green is profitable and sustainable. And I think this is the philosophy which has been embraced by all our board members, by all our team members, and slowly by all stakeholders. And that also made us to understand what's the impact of net zero. You know, the IPCC report that gave us time and again messages that until unless you look on climate change, you look on sustainability, you would land in climate crisis. And unfortunately, if you look at last 5 years, we have landed in climate crisis. But the blessing in disguise is that because of this crisis, we all are thinking in a big way what we can contribute, what we can do, how we can walk, and then how we can talk the walk. And this is what one of the effort which Dalmia Cement also made, because otherwise, if we would not have done anything, failure was there. But at the same time, when world was not thinking in that way, in 2018, after becoming one of the lowest carbon footprint cement company in global sector, we decided that there may be imperfect solutions, but let us line out. Let us put it on paper. Let us talk to the whole globe, not only the company, not only in India. And that is how our team members could come out that we will target that cement, as you rightly said, which is hard to abate, can be abated in terms of reducing carbon dioxide emissions. And this is how we could create a roadmap that by 2040, we would be carbon negative. First net zero and then carbon negative. And I know that some people were laughing at us when I announced first time in San Francisco, and then in UN, people were smiling also because it was difficult to even imagine also. But somehow the good part is the leadership which our team could provide now in the whole world. The 70% of the cement companies, whole world is cement, 70% cement companies are now committed for net zero cement and concrete by 2050. And that was adopted first in London on 12th of October, and then in Glasgow. And now world can be sure, like Ambassador US said, that now it's possible to abate. And this has been now proved. The roadmap has been created, and because of that roadmap, now actions would be taken. There may be few years delay here and there, but what we did in Dalmia Cement is we identified by each year and by each 5 year how the carbon footprints will come down, and which are, like someone has said, what is measurable can be monitorable. So we have put it measurable indices. We have provided monitorable KPIs so that one can understand how my carbon footprint, which are already 40% lower than the global average, can slowly come down. And by 2040, how it can be negative, maybe minus 40. So the point is, for achieving this, what is required? And this is what I would like to have attention of all of you. Major requirement would be one, the collaborations. Second, certain government initiatives. And third one would be how the finance can be made available for many such demonstration projects which are required not by only cement sector but globally. So when I say about collaboration, I think circular economy needs collaboration. Circular economy needs handholding by each other, and that will go in a long way. And in cement also, with collaboration, we could avoid, usage of minerals like limestone, etc., by using waste of other sectors like power sector, like steel sector, etc. And that has brought down the emissions to a larger, bigger extent. Second, collaboration would be required not only by the government but with the private sector also, that how green products can be used. Say like India produces the maximum low carbon cement in global sector. Now the important is, if it is 60% low carbon cement, how it can be slowly moved to 100%. Like in Dalmia Cement, we have now announced that from 2025 onwards, we will be producing only low carbon cement. Another collaboration which is required is how we can grow sustainable biomass, how we can grow sustainable plants, for which the collaboration of the government for wasteland, collaboration of the farmers for growing those bamboo, etc., would be required. So collaboration would be a big way. And secondly, the climate finance which is required for such projects would be very important, and their government, the UN, the World Bank, they all have to chip in to ensure that every time the financing of financial institutions doesn't look only at the payback time or the risk appetite, but one has to take and understand the cost of no action, because we know that if we are not able to take right action at right time, then the cost of inaction is very high in terms of loss of human life, which can't be measured against such expenditure which we are required to do. And so now important would be the green technologies usage in developing world. In India, if we look at certain corporates who have come together for voluntary commitment of near net zero to net zero, now one of the important area where it can make difference is use of green technologies. Technologies may be available in India, may not be. There may be risk in using new technologies. So how climate finance can chip in, how international carbon market can chip in, say like projects like carbon capture utilization, which can definitely be one of the vaccine for climate crisis that can play a very important role. And lastly, I would say, each one of us, and rightly you have said, rightly Modi ji has said about the lifestyle. So we'll have to have the green lifestyle, for which government, corporate, society, they all have to come together to enhance production of green product, enhance use of green product, so that ultimately people just look at the green side of the story. And we as Dalmia Cement are fully committed for it. We have been joining various organizations, various initiatives, so that we can learn more, we can experiment more, we can show more, and wherever we fail also, we can share with the world, so that ultimately we all together wins. So I think one of the initiatives in which we have joined is First Board Coalition, and we became one of the founding members to just commit that even at the premium also, we are ready to buy green products. So friends, I think it's a great platform to convey our message that what Indian corporates are doing and what global corporates are supposed to do along with India also. So thanks, Ambassador Puri, for the time.
Mr. Singhi, thank you very much. You lead by example, but you also made another valid point, that policy initiatives are important to incentivize industry. And I think that's particularly true. And that leads me to Mr. Nitin Prasad. And I'll tell you why. Nitin, I'm sure you will speak on net zero, Shell's international as well as India commitments. But I want to leave a question for you. Recently, the European Union released new taxonomies, and I think they are particularly important. In India, many people have focused on the fact that nuclear was included. But in Europe, most of the factors are, of course, people are talking about nuclear, but is that hydrocarbons were included. And the explanations, and I believe good ones, are that transitionally, that itself is particularly important. I leave it to you to say whatever you think is appropriate, but if you will address to the ideas of transition, I think that would be particularly useful for all of us, me in particular. Mr. Nitin Prasad, the screen is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ambassador Puri, and thank you very much to TERI for the invite. A really warm welcome to lots of my old friends, and especially Mr. Singh. Really good to see you again, sir. And of course, warm welcome to some new friends on the table. Ambassador Puri, you teed up, you answered my comment, and you teed up a very sort of question in its own self. So. Very much as far as Shell sort of goes is we are of course focused on net zero and getting to 2050. That's clear aspiration. But one of the things that we have also embedded into that aspiration is the point about scope 3. And I think this is where we have to sort of come back and understand that when we only say scope 1 and scope 2, we are largely ring fencing ourselves in our own sort of assets, right? But when we say scope 3, this is an extension of the utilization of energy at a business level and at a consumer level. And that is an additional responsibility that we all have as corporates. And we need to sort of think about that. We as Shell have committed that we will work on scope 3 emissions, which for us, by the way, is about 85 to 90% of our emissions going forward. Now, why is this critically important, and how does this link to the question that you came back and asked? Is because we've talked about this as a transition. And if anything, the last few months and weeks have shown us this is not going to be a smooth transition. And if we're careful, this is a very bumpy, if we're not careful, sorry, this is a very bumpy transition, a very volatile transition, where you will have all kinds of discontinuities because we're frankly not balancing the demand side of various sort of sources of energy with the supply side. And just a simple sort of case in point that's there. When we start talking about renewable power and we start talking about hydrogen and utilization, we can't forget that the usage of the PLF, so the production load factor of onshore solar, is only 12%. So if I need to run facilities and factories, I need to have 8 times as much to be 100% renewables, right? And the sun still doesn't shine for 12 hours of the day, right? And storage, is still not efficient enough or cost-effective enough for us to be able to do that. So we have to sort of come back and consider that there will need to be a blended set of sources while technologies emerge that allow us to come back and really start to think about what does a zero world really start to look like. Now, that brings in points on customers and sectors, because the reality is that there are absolutely sectors today that can be 100% electric and can electrify. But equally, there are lots of sectors today where we do not have solutions on how we can decarbonize them. We only have theory at this point. Let's take aviation as a case in point. We talk about sustainable aviation fuels. That's very fair. But do we have the world scale deployment of sustainable aviation fuels? Well, that is still a dream. And Shell is leading the way in that we have the largest facilities in this particular space, but we're still a drop in the ocean right at this point in time. And you can go sector by sector and you will see the range of sort of challenges that come in. Heavy duty trucking, for example. It is important for us to shift away to diesel, but hydrogen is not ready. So what do you do in between? And that is where we need to start making what are somewhat no regret decisions and start thinking about, for example, LNG as a transition to hydrogen along the way. And there is so shift away from a higher emitting source into an interim step that takes us eventually to hydrogen. I think the point is that these are the purposeful choices that we need to come back and make. Absolutely. I think hydrocarbons should not be used everywhere. Let's be very clear about that. And we are very clear about that also. But equally, to come back and suggest that there is, that you're going to cut off all possible usage of hydrocarbons is also not a transition that makes sense. And of course, hydrocarbons from fossil fuels is very different, by the way, from hydrocarbons from biosources, which is the other the other sort of nuance that we should be very careful about. Chemistry tells us that you can make a hydrocarbon from recycling plastic. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? All right, and I think we would all argue that those are good things for us to come back and do. So I think that's the point that I would sort of come back and make on that side of the house.
Mr. Prasad, thank you very much. As usual, incisive and with ideas. And let me also say something else to you. What I've always enjoyed in interactions with you is that the ideas are rounded and grounded in sort of practicality of what can be done. You made very valid points about, blending, about transition, the way things are. And some of these things are important for us to note, particularly if we are looking at the economics and in terms of those who are the real makers and shakers of this, which is industry. So thank you so very much. I'm very happy to turn to Ms. Sindhu Gangadharan. Ms. Gangadharan, the reasons, as I told you, are plenty. Some to do with the fact that you are those who are helping us host this event, the fact that it is you. But I also want to say the fact that it is perhaps one of the world's most important players in the area of large-scale digital and industry digital. I'm not sure that some of the work that you do is known across outside industry and outside those who are into the IT cells of the industry. You're, in a sense, the backbone. And that is, to my mind, one of the very important things. And I'm glad that you are stepping forward now to also, let me say, conquer the space between digital and sustainability and be there on both sides. Particularly happy to have you here. Ms. Sindhu Gangadharan, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Puri, and it was such a pleasure to listen in to Mr. Singhi and Mr. Nitin. Thank you to TERI for this brilliant collaboration that we have, and giving us all a platform to also talk about, share some of the things that we're doing in the industry. Particularly also Mr. Singhi. I mean, in an industry like yours, the transformation that you've achieved, absolutely commendable, right? Ambassador Puri, so as you rightly said, right, sustainability is right on top of the list for us at SAP because it directly links to our purpose, right, as a company. You've heard it also from Paul Marriott, President APJ, because at the core of everything we do, we believe in how can we help the world run better and how can we improve people's lives, right? So the question really is how can we live up to that purpose? And our objective and our definition of sustainability is clearly to create that very positive economic, environmental, and social impact, which translates to a world with zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality, right? And these are all areas, if you ask me, which are clearly interconnected. You can't see this in kind of silos, right? And also technology allows us to bridge those silos between these areas as well. And before I address the question on technology and how that kind of comes in, I also want to step back and look at it from the point of our own stakeholders, right? And then share a few points on the SAP point of view. And today, like all of us said, right, CEOs are clearly making sustainability a strategic priority. I mean, if you just look at the World Economic Forum, over 200 of the world's largest firms have already estimated that climate change would cost them nearly $1 trillion, right, in the case if there is no action. And leading companies have also taken action already, right? So 915 companies have signed up for the 1.5 degree compatible carbon targets. And what you're also seeing is companies making fundamental shifts in how they are doing business, right? Like, for example, Allianz, they don't insure any more coal-fired power plants. or Maersk, the Norwegian company, right, it's going for zero emissions vessels, right? They've clearly set that target. And we at SAP as well, like you earlier mentioned, have set a target for net zero emissions by 2023. And if you just look at it from a stakeholder perspective, from an investor point of view, I think there again, investors are clearly integrating ESGs also into their investment decisions, right? If you look at from the start of 2020, global sustainability investment have reached what, more than 35 trillion US dollars, right? Which is a 55% increase just in the last 4 years. And I can just reflect on our own side, right? As one of the largest R&D hubs for SAP here in India. I mean, one of our biggest goals is also to attract some of the best talent and also retain some of the best talent, right? But if you put yourself in the shoes of many of the employees, they're also making career choices based on the sustainability indexes of organizations. And employees are also more likely to work for a company who have very strong policies and very strong purpose when it comes to protecting the environment, right? Now, when it comes from an SAP point of view, I also want to share few key factors. For us, a reduction by 1% of the greenhouse gas emissions would already have a positive impact of 6 million euros for our operating profit, right? And 94% of our SAP employees thinks that is very important to pursue sustainability. Now, if I compare that to our survey back in 2009, that was 77%, also reflecting on the thinking process that has changed. And also, I mean, Shell is here. Shell is one of our top customers. But if you just look across, our top 2,000 customers manage an aggregate carbon footprint of around 10 billion tons, right? Which is nearly 25% of the global carbon emissions. So you can imagine the growth opportunity as well as the impact SAP can have if we help our customers reduce that even by 0.5%, right? Which is already 15 million of carbon emissions every single year. So, and there's two roles that we are taking when it comes to sustainability. And when I talk of this, I always say we have a dual role, right? One as an enabler, but second also as an exemplar, Ambassador Puri, because as an exemplar, we have the clear purpose to lead by example, right, in our own sustainable business operations. And we've been very serious about climate change for more than decades now, right? And we set our first carbon reduction targets already back in 2009, and we achieved them 3 years later in 2012. In 2021, we first set our goal to be carbon neutral by 2025. We brought that already forward to 2023. And our own Labs India campus here in Bangalore, which we talked about earlier, which you should visit, Ambassador, the campus is free of, and actually one of the first campuses here, which we can proudly say, free of complete single-use plastic, right? Which is a target we set already back in 2019 and achieved it. 95% of our operations on our campus are run using green energy sources. For the 15th year in a row, SAP is ranked number one in software company in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, right? So we in that sense, I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about, but more if I come on the enabler side, right? How is it that we can scale and help others, our 500,000 customers across 25 plus industries, to become sustainable, intelligent enterprises? And this is very key, right? Again, like I said earlier, SAP customers generate 87% of the total global commerce. And this is because 94% of the world's 500 largest companies are SAP customers. And so just imagine the leverage we can have by delivering digital solutions. And you talked about the scale, the backbone, right, that enable our customers to clearly manage their own, but also the planet's limited resources in a much better fashion, and contribute to the sustainable economy that we're all working towards, right? So, and that's this multiplier effect that technology can have to create that kind of a positive impact. And I just want to briefly touch upon also the technology aspect, right? Because when you look at technologies, this is what allows us to scale, because we talked about also aspects like giving you that visibility in what does it mean when we are talking about climate action. And this is also why we launched the Climate 21 program back in 2020. And the idea is really to give our customers the possibility, as they traverse through those very complex end-to-end business processes in the industries that they are part of, to have that visibility right into the core of the process, giving them that insights on what it means with key metrics from a sustainability point of view. We all talked about circular economy also here, right? When we are looking at processes, I mean, we are in the business for the last 50 years where we've supported organizations in running their end-to-end processes with limited resources, right? And today this maps in nicely into the whole circular economy in terms of how can we reduce waste, how can we ensure that we create that continuous material flow, right? Also aspects like supply chain transparency. I mean, you need to make sure that as you go across and work with your complex set of suppliers and procurement processes, you need to ensure that you work with those suppliers who deliver those products which are fit for circularity, right? And embedding that visibility is also key for decision makers. So a lot of things which we can talk about when it comes to also using technologies to scale the kind of transformation that we are striving for, Ambassador Puri.
Ms. Gangadharan, thank you very much. I was struck by many facets of what you said, but what struck me most of all is your possible ability to be able to bring others around to doing change. And given the scale at which you operate in your core business and your commitment to sustainability, I am particularly glad and delighted that we have you on board with us. You add to us, and I hope that we will add something to the wonderful work that you're doing. Congratulations and great. I want to turn to an old friend, Mr. Rajeev Ranjan Mishra. We were all together in Glasgow. He is actually another doer. He is on the ground, trying to actually bridge this particular gap of what the policy intends, what we all wish, and which actually on the ground, as Nitin Prasad put it, is not an easy task to deliver. So Aprava Energy has been in this business for some years. He himself has been helming it. And it's important for us sitting in India to listen to him, to understand what are the ground realities. Mr. Mishra, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Puri, and thanks to for the kind words as well as to TERI. I am not surprised, having been involved for over a decade, for you to organize such an excellent conference. It's a privilege, sir. I have heard and been really impressed by my fellow panelists and inspired. I was thinking, should I just repeat what points to make so that I don't repeat the points that have already been made. So I was thinking of a framework, and that goes as follows. With your permission, I'd like to address, which is country, industry, and then company. So very little about things that we have done, our targets. I think like most of our companies, we all have various targets and initiatives that perhaps should not surprise us, which is why we are all here. But here are my thoughts, starting with the country. How do we decarbonize India? How do we make real the five elixirs or the panchamrit that the Prime Minister talked about when we were all in Glasgow? And the first step is, broadly speaking, and I think Singh Sahab mentioned it. In fact, it was Girish, I think, is first electrify and then decarbonize. Now, in our country is, if we look at an energy basket, electricity constitutes about 18% at the moment of the energy consumption. Our target is to move it to, I think, 28% by 2030. And I try and focus more on the near-term targets rather than 50-year ones. I think if we manage the short term, the long term will look after itself is the approach we take. So that is the first thing to remember about how do we move more and more sectors onto electricity, those which are possible. We know, for instance, that two-wheeler and three-wheeler mobility is already economically more viable, more effective to move to electricity rather than hydrocarbons. Now, that is one area where we would like to see more action and leadership from the government, so that obviously they have to look into account the industry, the various investments made so that they don't become stranded. But I think declaration of a clear path to electrify transportation, personal transportation, in relatively short term, I think is possible, is doable, and must be done. I myself drive only electric cars. All my company cars are only EVs. But it's not that difficult, quite frankly. I think even for four-wheelers, the concepts of range anxiety is more in our mind, I have found from personal experience, than in reality. And I think we need to spread that message. We need to do that with the government and with everyone concerned. The second thing I would say is the crucial role of technology. And we've heard from the great leaders of SAP. Unless and until we move very fast on the technological front, we will not be able to. In the electricity sector, we have been lucky. As I look back on it, we started setting targets in 2007, so now 15 years back. Those days, renewables meant high risk, very dodgy returns. No one quite knew when the sun would shine and the wind would blow, and who would take your power. But we have seen what revolution has been caused. So today, in electricity itself, we are very lucky, where renewable energy is far and away cheaper than those from thermal sources. But what we'd like to, the fact is that the renewables is cheaper, amongst other things, to operate because there is no variable cost. But that also means, of course, that it cannot be generated 24/7. So taking in promoting storage technologies of whatever is economically available at the moment, and using technology to bring down the overall cost is absolutely crucial. A simple thing, and their organizations like SAP and the other technology companies would have a vital role to play, I would suggest. We do not, for instance, have a simple demand side measure in the country, like time of the day tariff. For that, we need smart meters, we need data available, transparent data to everyone, and implementation of a simple thing like that by some measures can bring down peak demand by several hundred thousand, tens of thousands at the moment, megawatts, and by 2050, 100,000 megawatts. So the use of technology is absolutely key, and the faster and the sooner we move on that in the country, the better it will be. The third is the way the industry has moved is it requires government support in the early days, and then the forces of market and R&D and technology take over. We saw that in solar. We need that kind of initial support. It's almost impossible to realize now. In 2008 or 9, the first solar projects in Gujarat had a tariff of 17 rupees a unit. But if that 17 rupees a unit had not been supported by the state, we would not have the 2 rupee a unit that has now come. It doesn't take very long, and therefore in areas such as not only green hydrogen, which of course everyone talks about, but one thing we haven't talked about is offshore wind. We have vast potentials in the country. They are much larger turbines. They do not consume land, which is such a precious commodity. And in that, I believe, but of course it is expensive at the moment, is if the government could initiate support in the early years, then I have no doubt that the market forces and the entrepreneurship of our people would help us see it transform very, very quickly. I would like to point out one more thing about which has personally for me as an individual, but certainly our companies and our people been very meaningful, when we talk about sustainability, we actually set targets not merely for carbon and so on, but so if you look at SDGs, it's also 5 and not only 7 and 13 that are very relevant. We have targets for women in leadership, women in engineering, overall gender ratio, and unfortunately not very impressive ones at the moment. It's a fight every year, little by little, but that has been really meaningful. It has been really meaningful to us as individuals, as players, and giving us a sense that we are not merely working for our company and earning a living, but in our own small ways, helping our country and our society and our communities get better. I think that's a message. I'm sure all of us already do that, which is very, very meaningful and has been found very helpful. Finally, I would say that we are blessed that the opportunities that we have, whether you talk 500 gigawatts, 50%, any numbers, it's just immense. It's $1 trillion prize for us to capture, but nothing can be done until the basics and that's of the sector are sorted. And that's where I get to you, Ambassador Puri. Your point is the bare fact is that this is a public forum, so I will not reveal the actual number. But a relatively small company like mine is owed something approaching 4-digit crores by various distribution companies. The ones which are leaders have several times that amount. No matter what the technology, no matter what the fuel, what the carbon content, nothing can really work, and the whole notion of sustainability will fail if the sector itself is not made sustainable. And that requires distribution reforms. As we all know, it is challenging for the central government. I know the MNRE, the minister, they fight absolutely day in and day out. But we are a federal structure, a union of states, with electricity being in the concurrent list. And it is being challenging to get 29 states on the same page as a central government. But unfortunately, that is only something which the government can perform. That's why we elect them. We as individual companies or even industries cannot influence that. So we would strongly urge, and I would urge all my colleagues here in their own interactions to push that message that unless and until, I would like to supply 100% RE to each of the colleagues, their companies, on this call, but unless and until the regulations and the structure is such that it is feasible, it can never be done. I'm conscious of the time, Ambassador, so and I have a habit of going on and on. So I will just take a pause here and very happy to speak if there are any follow-ups. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mishra, thank you very much, and thank you for pointing out that we do need environmental sustainability, but also sustainability of the corporates. Absolutely true. Nothing could have been better said than what you did. I'm going to turn to Mr. Sunil Kumar, who is the country president of Henkel Adhesives. Mr. Sunil Kumar, you will have much to say on the concept note and on the ideas of holistic sustainability. I want to leave a small question with you. And this comes out of maybe something small, personal, but what we have all experienced in the last 2 years in these COVID circumstances. And I dare say that it isn't a small little niche market anymore. Even in a country like India with our development needs, you've seen the growth of e-tailers. Each and every one of us is kind of happy that even our vegetables are delivered at home. What do we do about the one thing that makes us feel so good, which is that they are neat, clean, well packaged and delivered to us? And what do we do with that particular thing, the word that I used at the end? And I see that everybody is smiling because now really it's come home to roost. Mr. Sunil Kumar, it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Indeed a pleasure, Ambassador Puri. Thank you very much for a great start there. And also to all my fellow panel members, indeed great to have all of you. Thank you, Arup and Girish, for a fantastic introduction, and TERI team for putting this together. I think it's really a pleasure. Taking a leaf out of Ambassador Puri, first, you talked about what Prime Minister talked on the life part of it. Extending on that, if I could also say, I'm very happy to quote the 3P part as well that he told, the, pro-planet people. So I think, all of us are, and of course the audience, are all a part of this 3P program. And a big congratulations to everyone. So while of course, I will very much, try to, touch and give my view on it, Ambassador Puri, on what you mentioned, but let me maybe start first by giving a bit of an introduction of how Henkel sees, sustainability. Most of you would have known Henkel, but for the benefit of everybody, let me start by saying that for Henkel, sustainability has been, very much part of our DNA and part of our strategy. And the way we have called out our strategic, purposeful growth agenda, we have 5 pillars, in that. And the key pillars in this is starting from innovation, digitalization. I'm sure Sindhu and team are also very happy to hear that. And along with that, we have sustainability, which is one of the core pillars. And then we have well-rounded bits around how do we have future-ready models, and also to ensure that all this is well underpinned by a very strong fostering of a collaborative culture. Yeah. So this is very, very important from our perspective, because this is what we feel finally ensures that you have a winning portfolio. Now, it is good for me to sort of mention Henkel is a 146 years young organization. Okay, so it is not an old organization, it's a very young organization. And one reason it has been young is right from, Fritz Henkel, when it opened up 146 years back, sustainability was talked about at that era itself. By Fritz Henkel. So when people really were not talking about it, it was a topic which was talked by Fritz Henkel, then later on by Konrad Henkel, and then today right from the CEO Carsten Nobel and everybody down the line. Now, why I say this is, if anybody joins Henkel, okay, so we are an organization of around 52,000 plus family. And the first thing you would go as an orientation program is what we call as you become a sustainability ambassador. That's the first thing you become. So, we call ourselves saying that we are a family of 52,000 sustainability ambassadors. So that's the first thing you are expected to do, even before you go for all of the onboarding, programs, that every organization, as you know, we are supposed to do. So why we do this is, very much linked to our purpose, which is all about, we define it as pioneers at heart for the good of generations. So if you are really, caring about tomorrow, that all of us are, then, unless otherwise you don't do something today, then, I don't think, we can call ourselves pioneers, for tomorrow, or pioneers at heart for the good of generations. So again, sustainability is a very core philosophy that we live, day in and day out. Now, how do we go about doing it? Maybe I try to sort of, keep it more operational, practical, maybe on ground, because that becomes easier, for everybody to understand how are we living it as a day-to-day culture. See, the first and foremost, we started off almost as I told way back, but I think one of the members talked about saying that, it is very important to measure these things. Otherwise, if you don't measure, you lose track of what are we doing. So in 2010, the first time around, we told, energy, water, waste, we will start really measuring it at the rate of bringing it down by 3% year on year across the globe, across all offices, all plants, everything. Now, the fantastic part to share here is now 10 years down the line, we just released our 2020 sustainability report. Happy to share with everyone as well, including my panel members. Is we have been able to achieve close to 44% reduction. That means, what was a target of 30% to be done in 10 years across each of these areas. We were able to, bring it down by 44%. And why this has becomes important, and when we talk about, long-term goals, we talked about COP, the Glasgow meet and 2070 India. Henkel has a very clear vision to be climate positive by 2040, very clearly. So if that is the case, you have to come on some solid track record. And this helped us really to celebrate, saying that, we are as an organization living this whole metric. The second part of it is now we have set the new set of matrices, for 2030, across energy, water, waste. That's the footprint that we want to reduce. And also, the other three areas where linking to the UNC about how to social progress, how ensure the safety and health of our people, and how do we also enhance performance as a business organization that all of us are. At one end, you want to enhance your business, but you don't want to enhance business only by depleting the resources. And it is all about how do you bring it down. So we have also put that as these three areas to get better, but also reduce the footprint at the end of the day. And here, I must say, while we set the 2030 targets, like, some examples, like really we want to completely go for renewable energy, 100% renewable energy by 2030 across all our plants and operations. Reduce all the CO2 by almost 75% is what the plans are. We want to ensure, virgin plastics are completely, taken away 50% and go for 100% recyclable plastics is, the goals that we have. We have set, interim targets for 2025 as well, so that, we are able to measure ourselves, in between too. So measurement is a very, very, very important part of what we believe at Henkel, because we feel what gets measured, gets done. And we review it on a monthly basis. About everything, across the globe. So that is something which is, a highlight of how we, work on a day-to-day part of the business at the end of the day. When we are coming towards, there was this question about digitalization and sustainability, and whether how people are looking at it. We see this as a, a very, very important part of success towards sustainability. And are we completely on this journey towards completion? No, but have we made some good steps taken forward? Yes, I think, we have moved there quite a bit. A couple of them to talk about in India. When we talk about Industry 4.0, we have implemented in our largest plant in Kurkum in Pune, which is the largest plant in India, but also maybe the largest multi-technology plant, or one of the largest multi-technology plant in the world. And also in our Chennai plants, completely integrating it to the technology of Industry 4.0. Henkel has been awarded even very recently in the World Economic Forum for being the top-notch company for taking the fourth revolutionary industrial digital place, because this is something which again we very much closely believe in. So for us, in digital is very, very close to our heart. Things like, very simple things, but it's important to mention, like, we have completely gone out of paper. It might look like, something, but it is important that, we are able to, move into that direction as well, is something. Logistics, I think we have integrated our entire logistics to a globally, so that we are able to ensure much better service to our customers, again, using digitalization. Some of our plants, we have been able to integrate the sensors. There are, I think, 4,000 sensors that are connected to the cloud, and we are able to see analytics, using big analytics data, seeing what are the kind of patterns and how do we optimize the whole efficiency at the end of the day. So these are some examples that I thought I would talk about how we are, linking digitalization to sustainability as well. Very recently, we also came out with, maybe one of the first companies, also talking about finance instruments linking up to plastic, waste bond, and a big investment made there saying that if whatever the proceeds come, we are able to use it for Henkel sustainability initiatives. I think Gangaran also allude to the Dow. So we are very regularly being featured as one of the Dow, awardees as Henkel globally. But also recently we got awarded for the Dow Best Packaging Award because we came up with the plastic bank concept, which is all about completely circularly circulating the used cans and how it can be collected and ensure that we are reusing the whole concept. Now, before I end, also in the interest of time, very much, Ambassador Puri, you asked this question about e-tailers and how the packaging is moving in this direction. Yeah, from my point of view, I think this is getting into a very special space. And what I mean by that, to start with, we have come out with a very patented, exclusive packaging technology called the EPICS technology that we use in the US. People might have seen this from the e-tailers. So this is a very exclusive technology which not only ensures absolute maybe the hygiene and the cleanliness part which you talked about, but also brings in very solid robustness for what kind of shocks or drops or whatever one may think. So very unique technology of packaging has been introduced by Henkel and an exclusive technology. I'm very, very sure, in India, there is a lot of research, the teams are doing, the e-tailers are doing. One of the things in India, I must say, is where we are getting better or we're trying to get better is unlike the other countries like US or maybe Europe as well, is we are trying to resolve the sorting problem. How you do the sorting, collection, and bringing it back to whether it's to the paper recyclability or repulpability and those kind of concepts. So that's what the e-tailers are trying to see how they can work around it. But I won't be surprised. It's a matter of time. These kind of technology is going to be there in India, and we are working very, very closely with all the e-tailers. So very soon you will have those bits as well, and I think all of us will have this new technology of packaging seen in India, confident about it. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity. Before I close, I just want to end by only one last thing. Henkel, we also believe, which I quickly share in less than a minute, is we also have a program called as, Reach Them Young, which is all about, we feel if the future generation, has to be sustainability, focused, we go to schools and right from 3rd standard till I think 7th standard, we, ensure that, they are knowing about sustainability and very simple things, right from maybe closing a tap to switching off a light, and coming back and how it impacts. So once we get the next generation onto sustainability mode, we feel that, we have kind of, got them onto the right track. With that, thank you very much for the opportunity. Pleasure speaking with you and with everybody. And thank you, everybody. And back to you, Ambassador Puri.
Mr. Sunil Kumar, thank you very much. Let me tell you, we are going to take you on. We must do something about this entire business of sustainability in packaging. I think this is a need of the hour here in India. But we still have 3 minutes. And I know that Sindhu Gangadharan has put up her hand and I'm going to give her the opportunity, but I want to ask my young colleague here to read out a question which one of our colleagues in TERI who's involved in this team has put out. It's a relevant question, although it's a technical and a rather substantive question. So Saurabh, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Come a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So the question is industry willing to catalyze finances for new and innovative solutions like battery storage or iron storage, sodium ion or HES? So anyone on the panel can actually take this question and give a quick reply on that.
Please sit here. Yeah. Thank you very, very much. So, Sindhu, let me ask you, since you raised your hand, and of course, Mr. Nitin Prasad. Oh, everybody wants to answer the question. I'm glad it's money and everyone knows the answers. Nitin, would you give a quick shot to that? We have a minute or so.
Yeah, so the answer asked whether we would be willing to sort of come back and do that, and the answer, of course, is yes. We have had a venture startup fund for 20-25 years now, and we just announced a $1.4 billion fund on new venture technologies, of which all of these are part of it. We also have incubation services that we come in and we run in India, supporting the startups and helping them sort of come back and grow, as well as R&D and in battery tech. The question was very specific to a couple of specific technologies, but I think just I do want to come back and say that there is a large spectrum of technologies that are going to need to be developed as we go forward, and I think what you're seeing is, if I may speak for a number of different industry players, a number of them are supporting these new technology developments. The problem, I think, is not necessarily on the financing side, if I'm brutally honest about it. The problem is that they are all in the TRL 1, 2, 3. And how do we accelerate their development into commercialization? That is actually the fundamental problem that's there, not the technology and not the financing.
Thank you very much, Nitin. Singhiji, you wanted to say something, again, very short, please.
It will be surely our endeavor to catalyze finance, because as a capital deployment policy, we have identified and we have kept certain percentage of our operating profit to promote green technologies, and this battery storage can be one that technology or associated with it, because we ultimately have to go for 100% renewable energy consumption by 2030. So this will be one of the important area to work on and to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Singhiji. Taruna, I hope you've had your answers. Sindhu, you wanted to speak.
No, I think the question itself was answered, Ambassador Puri, and I just wanted to say, we are, of course, like Nitin mentioned, looking into startup accelerator programs, right, where we are looking into innovation in different spaces. And I think also to the point on commercialization, Nitin, we definitely, if you bring the players together, right, and kind of put them on a common network to kind of drive that forward, that's also a possibility that we could explore.
Thank you very much to all of you. I want to tell you, this has been an absolutely wonderful panel with thoughts and substantive ideas. And I dare say at the end, offers too. So this is particularly meaningful. Mr. Lavneesh Chanarana, the screen is yours. I'm sorry we've eaten away 2 minutes of your time, but the screen is yours.
No problem. Thank you so much, Ambassador Puri, and thank you everyone for such an insightful discussion. It was really well articulated from every panelist's point of view. I just have been given the task of summarizing what you said. I will just structure that into takeaways, probably that the audience can take. So one thing that very clearly came out is, we in India have a much larger role to play in terms of sustainability efforts of the globe, given our mission and given our approaches, particularly Asia being the largest emitter as far as the world is concerned. That with that as a base, the foundation, the base provided in terms of the initiatives of Panchamrit or otherwise gives rise, as the panelists mentioned, to three broad pillars. One pillar is the government-led policy programs and awareness, wherein there is a scope for collaboration of industry as well as the government. Second pillar is the collaboration itself between cross-stakeholder collaboration for co-innovation of solutions, for exchange of best practices, for actually knowledge sharing and promoting the innovations that we talk about. And third large pillar that was spoken during the panel is the whole role of technology and digitization, whether it's the operational technology or and that in terms of extending to the scope 3 requirements that, for example, Shell mentioned that 85%, or using technologies to ensure that what we are sourcing is actually compliant, and also automating the broader compliance requirements. So that's the third pillar. So working on these three packages, probably we can look at something inclusive and sustainable. Thank you very much once again, and thank you very much, Ambassador Puri, for your opportunity.
Mr. Chandana, thank you. And
चालू
SAP,
करना 2 मिनट में join कर रहा हूँ, हाँ?
and SAP, thank you very much for all your help and support. We are bringing this session to a close, and thank you to every one of you for always being there supporting us, and look forward to your continued support for the World Sustainable Development Summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks, Ambassador, to TERI, and thanks to all panelists.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.